Commander Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of the human starship Unity as it approached. Zentara Prime, the massive alien space station, gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of purple nebulae and distant stars. After 3 months of faster-than-light travel, humanity was about to make formal contact with the Galactic Confederation for the first time. Dr. Lisa Grant joined him at the viewport, her scientific instruments scanning the alien architecture. She had spent years studying the fragments of alien technology that had led humanity to develop their own FTL drives. Now she would finally meet the beings who created such marvels. "It's beautiful," she whispered, watching the graceful spires and organic curves of the station. Ships from dozens of different species moved in carefully orchestrated patterns around the structure. Jake nodded, but his expression remained tense. As the leader of humanity's first diplomatic mission, he carried the hopes and fears of 8 billion people. The initial radio communications had been promising but formal. The aliens seemed curious about humanity, but also cautious. Captain Ryan Burke approached them from the bridge. His military bearing was unmistakable, even in the civilian diplomatic uniform he wore. "We're receiving docking instructions," he reported. "They're assigning us Bay 47 in the outer ring." Ambassador Claire Davis emerged from her quarters carrying a briefcase full of gifts and cultural samples from Earth. She had been chosen for her ability to speak 17 Earth languages and her experience in complex negotiations. Her calm demeanor helped steady the nerves of the entire crew. The docking process took 2 hours as alien traffic controllers guided them through security checkpoints and scanning procedures. Jake watched through the cameras as strange ships passed by. Some looked like living creatures with smooth biological hulls, while others appeared to be geometric crystals that somehow moved through space. When they finally docked, a reception committee was waiting. The aliens were nothing like the science fiction movies had predicted. The lead figure was tall and ethereal with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. It moved with fluid grace and spoke through a translation device that rendered its words in perfect English. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the being said. "I am Counselor Vexen of the Vorthak Collective. We greet you in the name of the Galactic Confederation." Jake stepped forward and offered the traditional human handshake, which the alien studied with curiosity before gently mimicking the gesture. "Thank you for welcoming us, Counselor Vexen. We come in peace and friendship." The group was escorted through corridors that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. Lisa marveled at the technology, while Ryan cataloged potential security concerns. Claire observed the social dynamics between different alien species they encountered. The council chamber was vast and intimidating. Representatives from 12 different species sat in a circular arrangement around a holographic display showing star maps and data streams. The humans were directed to a small platform in the center where they felt very much like specimens under examination. Counselor Vexen introduced them to the assembly. The Vorthak appeared to be the diplomatic leaders, while the Krex Empire provided military oversight. The Krex looked like armored reptiles with sharp features and calculating eyes. Other species included the hive-minded Zelanti, the energy-based Photonic Collective, and several others whose names Jake struggled to remember. "We have studied your species extensively since your first radio transmissions reached our sensors," announced General Thrax of the Krex Empire. His voice was harsh and guttural even through the translator. "Your history concerns us greatly." Claire stepped forward with practiced diplomatic grace. "We understand that our past contains conflicts and mistakes. However, we have come here seeking peace and mutual cooperation. Humanity has much to offer the galactic community." The Zelanti speaker, a cluster of insectoid beings that moved as one, buzzed their response. "Your species has engaged in constant warfare throughout your recorded history. You have weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. How can we trust such violent creatures?" Lisa tried to explain human nature from a scientific perspective. "Conflict has been part of our evolution, but so has cooperation. We've overcome our greatest challenges by working together. Our diversity and adaptability are our greatest strengths." The debate continued for hours. The aliens presented evidence of human wars, environmental damage, and social conflicts. They seemed particularly disturbed by humanity's nuclear weapons and the fact that different human nations still maintained separate militaries. Jake found himself defending not just his species but their right to exist among the stars. "We admit, we're not perfect," he said, "but we're learning and growing. Every species must have faced similar challenges in their development." "That is precisely the problem," Counselor Vexen replied sadly. "Most species that survive to achieve space travel have already overcome their violent tendencies. Your species appears to carry those tendencies with you to the stars." The Photonic Collective spoke next, their words appearing as patterns of light. "We have observed species like yours before. They spread conflict wherever they go. The galaxy cannot risk such contamination." Ryan could remain silent no longer. "You're judging us based on incomplete information." "Yes, we've had wars, but we've also created beautiful art, made scientific discoveries, and shown incredible compassion for others. Every human who volunteered for this mission left behind families they may never see again, just for the chance to make peace with you." The council deliberated in private while the humans waited in uncomfortable silence. When they returned, Counselor Vexen's expression was grave. "We have reached a decision," the alien announced. "Humanity represents too great a risk to Galactic stability. However, we are not without mercy. We offer you a choice." The holographic display showed a distant star system with a single habitable planet. The world appeared dark and forbidding with violent storm systems and rough terrain. "This is Kepler 442c, General Thrax explained with what might have been satisfaction. "It is what we classify as a Class X death world. No intelligent species has ever successfully colonized it. The gravity is crushing, the weather is unpredictable, and the native life forms are extremely hostile." Claire felt her heart sink. "You're offering us exile?" "We are offering you survival," Counselor Vexen corrected. "You may take 2 million of your people to this world. Your FTL technology will be disabled to prevent you from leaving. But you will be alive and free to build whatever society you choose." Jake stared at the image of the hostile planet. "And if we refuse?" The Krex General's armor plates clicked ominously. "Then humanity will be classified as a galactic threat and dealt with accordingly. Your solar system will be quarantined, and your species will be prevented from achieving space travel by any means necessary." The choice was no choice at all. Jake thought of Earth's children, of families who would never know what happened to their loved ones. He thought of all the dreams humanity had for exploring the stars and finding their place among the galactic community. "How long do we have to decide?" he asked quietly. "You have one standard day," Counselor Vexen replied. "We regret this necessity, but the safety of the galaxy must come first." That night, the human delegation held an emergency conference with Earth via quantum communication. The news sent shockwaves through every government and household on the planet. Protests erupted in major cities while scientists desperately tried to find alternatives. In the end, Jake made the decision that would haunt him forever, standing before the Galactic Council the next day. He accepted the terms of exile. 2 million volunteers would be selected to start a new colony on the Deathworld. The rest of humanity would remain on Earth under alien observation until they could prove they had overcome their violent nature. The final weeks passed in a blur of preparation and tearful goodbyes. Massive colony ships were loaded with supplies, equipment, and the bravest souls humanity could offer. Jake watched from the bridge of the lead ship as Earth grew smaller behind them, wondering if he had saved his species or doomed them to a slower death on an alien world. The journey to Kepler 442c took 6 months. When they finally arrived in orbit around their new prison, the planet looked even more hostile than the holographic projections had suggested. Massive storms raged across continents while the gravity readings confirmed their worst fears, but as Jake looked at the determined faces of his fellow exiles, he felt something he hadn't expected: hope. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless disasters. They had turned deserts into gardens and tamed rivers that had raged for millennia. Maybe the aliens had made a mistake. Maybe they had given humanity exactly what they needed to become something greater than they had ever imagined. General Marcus Steele stood on the observation platform of New Haven City and watched his grandson train with the other children in the combat yard below. The boy was only 12 years old, but he could already lift twice his own body weight and run faster than any adult human from old Earth. Like all children born on Kepler 442c, he was stronger, quicker, and more resilient than his ancestors could have ever imagined. 50 years had passed since the Great Exile began. The first decade had been brutal beyond description. The crushing gravity that was more than twice Earth normal had killed hundreds of colonists whose hearts simply could not adapt. The massive predators that roamed the dark forests had claimed entire settlements. The acid storms that came without warning had dissolved buildings and burned through protective gear, but humanity had endured. More than endured, they had thrived in ways that amazed even themselves. Dr. Elena Voss emerged from her laboratory beneath the city with data tablets clutched in her hands. Her research into human genetic adaptation had become the most important work on the planet. As the chief geneticist, she had documented how the harsh environment was changing humanity at the cellular level. "Marcus, you need to see these latest results," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "The genetic changes are accelerating with each generation. The children born here aren't just adapting to Kepler, they're evolving specifically for it." Marcus followed her back into the lab where holographic displays showed DNA sequences and cellular structures. The differences between Earth humans and Kepler humans were becoming more pronounced every year. "Look at this muscle fiber density," Elena pointed to a rotating model. "It's increased by 40% in children born here. Their bone structure is becoming denser to handle the gravity. But that's not all. Their reflexes are faster, their healing rate is accelerated, and their cognitive processing speed has improved significantly." Hunter Kane entered the lab carrying his field gear. As one of the elite scouts responsible for mapping the dangerous wilderness areas, he had spent more time in Kepler's hostile environment than almost anyone. His own body showed the changes Elena was describing. He stood taller and moved with predatory grace that would have been impossible for an Earth-born human. "The latest expedition found something interesting," Hunter reported. "About 300 kilometers north of the Razor Mountains, we discovered ruins. They're definitely artificial and they're old." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with Kepler's cold winds. "Alien ruins? That's what we thought at first," Hunter continued. "But Elena's analysis of the materials suggests something else. We think they're from another exile group. Maybe one that came here centuries ago." Elena pulled up new data on her displays. "We found genetic material in the ruins. 3 different species, all of them now extinct. The dating suggests they were sent here at different times over the past 1,000 years. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Confederation had been using Kepler 442c as a dumping ground for unwanted species for centuries. Every previous group had failed to survive, while humanity had not only endured but was becoming stronger. Engineer Sophie Bell arrived with her own disturbing news. As the coordinator of infrastructure development, she oversaw the construction of all human settlements. On Kepler, her latest surveys had revealed just how hostile their new world really was. "The seismic activity is getting worse," she reported. "The planet's core is more unstable than we initially calculated. The magnetic field fluctuates wildly, which explains the radiation storms. And the wildlife is unlike anything we've ever encountered." Sophie's reports described creatures that seemed designed by nightmares. The shadow stalkers were pack hunters that could blend perfectly with their surroundings and struck without warning. The bone crushers were massive predators with jaws powerful enough to bite through steel. The acid spitters could dissolve human flesh from 50 meters away, yet humanity had learned to fight and kill every single species they encountered. The children played games that would have been considered military training on Earth. They learned to hunt the shadow stalkers using sound and movement patterns. They built traps for the bone crushers using the planet's own unstable geology. They created armor from the hides of creatures they had killed. Marcus remembered the early days when simple survival had consumed every waking moment. Food had been scarce until they learned to eat the native plants and animals. Water had been contaminated until they developed filtration systems that could handle Kepler's aggressive bacteria. Shelter had been inadequate until they learned to build structures that could withstand the planet's violent weather, but necessity had driven innovation at an incredible pace. The tools and weapons they created were unlike anything from Earth. They were simpler in some ways, but far more durable and effective. Everything had to work in extreme conditions or people died. The social changes had been just as dramatic. The old divisions between nations and cultures had vanished completely within the first decade. Survival had required absolute cooperation and the sharing of all knowledge and resources. Leadership was based purely on competence and results. Anyone who could keep people alive and help the colony grow was given authority, regardless of their background. Hunter described how the scouting teams operated with a unity that would have been impossible on Earth. "We don't need long discussions or complicated orders," he explained. "Everyone knows their job and trusts everyone else to do theirs. When a Shadow Stalker pack attacks, we move like a single organism." Elena's genetic research had revealed why. This cooperation came so naturally to Kepler humans. "The stress of constant survival has actually triggered changes in brain chemistry," she said. "The children show increased levels of oxytocin and decreased aggression toward their own group. They're literally evolving to work together more effectively." Sophie's engineering teams displayed the same characteristics. Complex construction. Projects that would have taken years of planning on Earth were completed in months through intuitive cooperation and shared problem-solving. Marcus had seen combat veterans from Earth break down and cry when they first experienced Kepler's dangers. But children who had grown up here faced the same threats with calm determination. They had never known safety, and so they had never developed fear of the unknown. The communication arrays that still connected them to Earth brought occasional messages from the Galactic Confederation. The aliens seemed satisfied that humanity was contained and no longer posed a threat to galactic stability. They had no idea what was actually happening on Kepler-442c. Recent reports from Earth described a world still struggling with the same old problems. Wars continued between nations that competed for resources and ideological dominance. Environmental damage was accelerating as technology advanced faster than wisdom. Political systems remained inefficient and corrupt. In contrast, Kepler humanity had solved every major social problem through the simple necessity of survival. There was no war because war meant death for everyone. There was no environmental destruction because the environment was already trying to kill them. There was no political corruption because incompetent leaders got people killed and were quickly replaced. Marcus stood on his observation platform again as the sun set over New Haven City. The settlement now housed over 50,000 people, in buildings that could withstand anything Kepler could throw at them. The surrounding farms grew food that was more nutritious than anything Earth had produced. The defensive barriers could stop any predator the planet had created. Children played in the streets with a confidence and capability that amazed him. They could repair complex machinery, track dangerous animals, and survive alone in the wilderness for weeks. But they also created art and music and literature that captured the unique beauty of their harsh world. Elena joined him as the first stars appeared in Kepler's strange purple sky. "Do you ever wonder what would happen if we encountered the Confederation again?" she asked. Marcus smiled as he watched his grandson demonstrate a fighting technique to his friends. The boy moved with speed and precision that would have been superhuman by Earth standards. "I think they might be surprised," he replied. "They expected Kepler to destroy us. Instead, it's creating something they never imagined. Something stronger than they ever feared we could become." Admiral Jack Phoenix stood in the command center of New Haven City watching the emergency transmission from the Galactic Confederation with cold interest. 100 years had passed since humanity's exile to Kepler-442c, and this was the first time the aliens had attempted contact. The message was brief and desperate. The galaxy was under attack by an extragalactic invasion force called the Devourers. Entire star systems had been consumed and billions of lives lost. The Confederation's mighty fleets were in full retreat, and their advanced technology was proving useless against the invaders. They needed help, and they were asking humanity to provide it. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Cross entered the command center carrying reports from the outer defense stations. As the leader of Kepler's Special Operations Forces, she commanded soldiers who could survive and fight in conditions that would kill any Earthborn human. Her troops regularly hunted the planet's most dangerous predators for training exercises. The alien ship has been waiting at the edge of our system for 6 hours, she reported. Long-range scans show it's heavily damaged and running on minimal power. Whatever they're running from must be serious. Chief Engineer Ben Torres joined them with technical data about the approaching vessel. His analysis teams had become experts at understanding alien technology through necessity. Over the decades, they had salvaged and reverse-engineered equipment from previous exile expeditions that had failed on Kepler. Their ship design is different from the ones that brought us here, Ben explained. More military-focused and built for speed rather than comfort. But the power systems are failing and they're leaking atmosphere. They won't last much longer without assistance. Admiral Phoenix considered the situation carefully. The Confederation had abandoned humanity to die on a hostile world, and now they wanted help in their hour of need. The irony was not lost on anyone. In the room, diplomat Rachel Stone approached with her own analysis of the political implications. As a member of the generation born on Kepler, she had never known the fear and uncertainty that had plagued the original exiles. Her confidence and directness would have been impossible for someone raised under alien domination. "We could ignore them and let them die," she stated matter-of-factly. "After what they did to us, we would be justified. But we should at least, hear what they have to say before making a decision." The decision was made to allow the alien ship to dock at the orbital station that humanity had built above Kepler. The original exile ships had been converted into the foundation for an impressive space facility that could service vessels and coordinate planetary defense. When the alien delegation arrived, they were clearly not prepared for what they found. The humans who met them at the docking bay were taller and stronger than the species they remembered. Their movements were fluid and precise with an underlying sense of controlled violence that made the aliens nervous. The delegation was led by Counselor Zexon, a descendant of the original Vorthak who had pronounced humanity's exile. The alien was visibly shocked when Admiral Phoenix greeted them in the docking bay. The human stood nearly 2 meters tall with muscle density that was clearly visible even through his uniform. His presence commanded respect in a way that seemed almost supernatural. "Welcome to Kepler Station," Admiral Phoenix said with polite formality. "It has been a long time since your people visited this system." Counselor Zexon struggled to maintain diplomatic composure. "Admiral, we come seeking assistance in a matter of galactic importance. Our worlds are under attack by forces beyond our ability to resist." The alien delegation was escorted to a conference room that had been designed to accommodate various species. But the furniture and equipment all showed signs of the practical engineering that had evolved on Kepler. Everything was built to last and function under extreme conditions. Lieutenant Colonel Cross demonstrated the changes in humanity by casually lifting a conference table that would have required several aliens working together to move. She repositioned it without any apparent effort and then sat down as if nothing unusual had happened. "Tell us about these devourers," she requested directly. Her tone was polite but carried an undercurrent of authority that surprised the aliens. They were not accustomed to humans who showed no deference to their supposed superiority. The alien briefing described an enemy unlike anything the Confederation had ever faced. The Devourers were an insectoid hive mind that consumed organic matter to fuel their reproduction. They stripped planets bare of all life and used the resources to build more ships and soldiers. Their technology was biological rather than mechanical, and it adapted quickly to any defensive measures. Chief Engineer Torres asked technical questions that revealed how much human understanding had advanced. What power sources do they use? How do they coordinate across interstellar distances? What are their ships constructed from? The aliens found themselves struggling to answer questions they had never considered. Their military thinking had become rigid over centuries of peace, while human minds had been sharpened by constant survival challenges. Diplomat Stone listened to the briefing with growing understanding. "You've been fighting them the same way you fought previous enemies," she observed. "Large fleets in formal battles using established tactics, but they adapt to everything you try." Counselor Zexon admitted the truth reluctantly. "Every strategy we attempt fails after initial success. They learn from each encounter and modify their approach. We are losing this war badly." Admiral Phoenix studied the tactical data with interest. The alien approach to warfare was sophisticated, but predictable. They relied heavily on technology and coordination while avoiding the chaos and uncertainty that defined real combat. "How many of your people have fought in ground combat against these creatures?" he asked. The question confused the aliens. "Ground combat is avoided whenever possible," Counselor Zexon replied. "We fight in space where our technological advantages are greatest." Lieutenant Colonel Cross exchanged glances with her colleagues. The disconnect was enormous. These aliens had forgotten how to fight for survival while humanity had been doing nothing else for a century. "We need to see your current battle reports and tactical assessments," Admiral Phoenix decided. "If we're going to help you, we need to understand exactly what you're facing." The data that followed painted a picture of systematic defeat. The Confederation's forces were being outmaneuvered and overwhelmed by an enemy that fought with biological efficiency and adaptability. Their casualties were mounting while their resources dwindled, but human eyes saw opportunities, where alien minds saw only problems. The Devourer's biological nature made them predictable in certain ways. Their hive mind created coordination but also vulnerability. Their adaptation was rapid but followed patterns that could be exploited. Chief Engineer Torres began outlining modifications to human equipment that could be effective against biological targets. Lieutenant Colonel Cross described tactics that would work against hive mind coordination. Diplomat Stone explained psychological warfare techniques that could disrupt collective consciousness. The aliens listened with growing amazement as humans dissected their impossible problem and began proposing solutions. These were not the primitive creatures they had exiled a century ago, but something far more capable and dangerous. Admiral Phoenix finally addressed the core issue. "You're asking us to fight your war after you condemned us to death. Why should we risk human lives for species that considered us too violent to exist?" Counselor Zexon's response was honest in its desperation. "Because if the Devourers succeed, they will eventually find this system. Humanity will face the same extinction we are trying to prevent." The human leadership considered this in silence. They had built a civilization that could survive anything Kepler could create, but an extragalactic invasion was a different level of threat entirely. Rachel Stone spoke first. "If we do this, it won't be as your subordinates or junior partners. Humanity has earned the right to be treated as equals." "We agree to any terms you set," Counselor Zexon replied immediately. "We need your help to survive." Admiral Phoenix made the decision that would reshape galactic politics forever. "We'll help you fight your war, but we do it our way using our methods. And when it's over, things are going to be very different between our species." The first human warships to leave Kepler in over a century launched 3 days later, carrying soldiers who had never known defeat and technology designed to function in the harshest environments imaginable. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had become. In their exile, General Alex Hunter watched the tactical display as human forces engaged the Devourer fleet above the contested world of Vega Prime. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic War, and already the tide was beginning to turn. Where Confederation forces had suffered defeat after defeat, human tactics were proving devastatingly effective. The alien commanders still could not understand how humans achieved such consistent victories. Their ships were smaller and less advanced than Confederation vessels, but they fought with an unpredictability that confused the hive mind of the Devourers. Human crews made decisions in seconds that took alien councils hours to reach. Captain Nina Brooks commanded the human destroyer Defiance as it struck at the heart of the Devourer formation. Her ship had been built on Kepler using principles learned from a century of surviving impossible conditions. Every system was designed for reliability under stress rather than technological elegance. "Devourer bioship turning to intercept," reported her tactical officer. "It's adapting to our previous attack patterns," Nina smiled grimly. The Devourer's ability to adapt was their greatest strength but also their weakness. They learned from experience but could not anticipate truly. Random behavior. Human commanders who had grown up fighting Kepler's unpredictable predators excelled at chaos. "All ships scatter and regroup at random intervals," she ordered. "No patterns, no formations. Make them guess what we're doing next." The human fleet dispersed in directions that seemed completely illogical to both Devourers and Confederation observers. Ships that should have provided mutual support flew off alone while others grouped together in seemingly vulnerable clusters. But each captain knew exactly what they were doing based on instincts developed through decades of survival. Sergeant Chris Morgan led his squad through the ruins of a Confederation city on the planet's surface. His soldiers were hunting Devourer ground forces that had been left behind when the fleet retreated. The aliens had expected easy prey but found themselves facing humans who treated urban warfare like hunting dangerous animals. The Devourers were insectoid creatures that stood 3 meters tall with razor-sharp claws and biological armor that could deflect most energy weapons. They moved in coordinated swarms and communicated through pheromone signals that allowed instant tactical coordination. Against Confederation forces, they had been nearly unstoppable, but human soldiers approached them differently. Instead of trying to match their coordination, the humans used individual initiative and unpredictable movements. They struck from unexpected angles and disappeared before the hive mind could respond effectively. "Contact ahead," whispered Private Kelly Nash through the squad's communication system. "Patrol of 6 Devourers moving through the commercial district." Morgan studied the tactical situation through his enhanced vision display. The Devourers were following efficient search patterns that would locate any hiding Confederation survivors, but their predictability made them vulnerable to ambush tactics. "Take position above them," he ordered. "Wait for my signal and then hit them from 3 directions at once." The human squad moved through the ruined buildings with practiced stealth. They had learned urban combat by hunting shadow stalkers through the twisted canyons of Kepler where a single mistake meant death. These alien ruins were actually easier to navigate than their home terrain. Dr. Paul Reed observed the battle from his mobile laboratory ship. As the expedition's lead xenobiologist, he had been studying Devourer specimens and learning their weaknesses. His discoveries were already proving crucial to human tactical advantages. The Devourers reproduced by consuming organic matter and converting it into new soldiers. This made them incredibly efficient at replacing losses but also created dependency on constant feeding. Human forces had learned to deny them food sources by evacuating populations and destroying agricultural centers. Their biological systems show interesting stress patterns when deprived of organic compounds for extended periods, Pohl reported to General Hunter. They become less coordinated and make tactical errors. This intelligence had led to the development of new weapons specifically designed to exploit Devourer biology. Human engineers created ammunition that disrupted their nervous systems and chemical compounds that interfered with their pheromone communication, but the real advantage came from human adaptability. Confederation forces tried to fight the Devourers, using established military doctrine while humans improvised constantly. They used tactics borrowed from big game hunting, urban guerrilla warfare, and survival techniques developed on Kepler. Captain Brooks demonstrated this flexibility as her ship engaged a massive Devourer biocruiser. The alien vessel was 3 times larger than her destroyer and equipped with weapons that had destroyed entire Confederation fleets. But size meant nothing if the enemy could not predict where you would be. "Engineering, I need maximum power to engines for 30 seconds, she ordered. Weapons, prepare the new biodisruptor torpedoes. The Defiance accelerated directly toward the Devourer ship in what appeared to be a suicidal attack run. The alien bioship responded by charging its primary weapons and moving to intercept. Its hive mind calculated the human trajectory and prepared to destroy the smaller vessel. But at the last moment, Nina executed a maneuver that would have been impossible without Kepler-enhanced reflexes and intuition. Her ship rolled and twisted through space in a pattern that defied physics and tactical logic. The Devourer weapons missed completely while human torpedoes struck vital systems. The biodisruptor warheads had been designed by Paul Reed using knowledge gained from studying failed Devourer specimens. They released compounds that interfered with the biological processes that kept the ship alive. The massive vessel began to convulse and lose coordination as its living systems failed. On the ground, Sergeant Morgan's squad struck their ambush with perfect timing. Human soldiers appeared from impossible angles and attacked with weapons designed for Kepler's most dangerous predators. The Devourers tried to coordinate their response but found themselves fighting enemies that seemed to anticipate their every move. "They're trying to signal for reinforcements," reported Corporal Dave Miller as he tracked pheromone emissions. "Should we jam their communications?" Morgan considered the tactical situation. "No, let them call for help. We want more of them to come here so we can kill them all at once." The confidence in his voice would have shocked Confederation commanders, who still thought of the Devourers as nearly invincible. But human soldiers who had grown up fighting creatures that could kill them with a single mistake had no fear of alien insects. The reinforcements arrived exactly as Morgan had predicted. A full Devourer company moved through the ruins expecting to support their patrol. Instead, they found carefully prepared kill zones where human weapons could destroy them systematically. General Hunter watched the battle reports with satisfaction. Human forces were achieving victory ratios that seemed impossible to alien observers. A single human company could defeat Devourer forces that had required entire Confederation fleets to contain. The key was psychological as much as tactical. Humans fought without fear because they had been raised in an environment where death was always possible. They made decisions quickly because hesitation had been bred out of them through generations of survival pressure. Confederation officers who tried to learn human tactics failed because they could not replicate the mindset. They still thought in terms of preserving forces and minimizing casualties, while humans focused entirely on destroying the enemy regardless of cost. Captain Brooks received new orders as her ship finished destroying the Devourer biocruiser. Human Command was launching a major offensive to retake the Vega system, and they needed her ship to lead the assault on the heavily defended planet Vega 4. "Set course for Vega 4, she ordered her crew. "It's time to show these aliens what humans can really do." The offensive that followed became known as the Vega Liberation and marked the beginning of the end for the Devourer invasion. Human forces demonstrated tactics and capabilities that shocked both enemies and allies. They fought with a combination of technological innovation and savage determination that no other species could match. Within 6 months, human advisors were being requested by every major Confederation fleet. The species that had once been considered too dangerous for civilization had become the galaxy's most valuable military asset. The exiles had returned as saviors, and the balance of galactic power would never be the same. President Karen Walsh stood before the assembled representatives of 47 different species in the Great Hall of New Geneva Station. 5 years had passed since the final defeat of the Devourers, and the galaxy was still adjusting to the new reality that had emerged from the ashes of war. The old Galactic Confederation had collapsed under the weight of its failures, and now a new order was taking shape. The hall itself had been built using human engineering principles learned on Kepler 442c. Every surface was designed for durability and function rather than the delicate aesthetics that had characterized alien architecture. The building could withstand direct military assault while providing perfect acoustics for diplomatic negotiations. Admiral Tyler Stone sat in the military advisory section reviewing reports from human peacekeeping forces scattered across dozens of worlds. The species that had once dismissed humanity as too violent for civilization now begged for human protection against the chaos that followed the war. Entire star systems had requested permanent human garrisons to maintain order. The Krex Empire has formally requested membership in the Human Federation, Admiral Stone reported to the Assembly. They're offering to disband their military and accept human oversight of their territorial disputes. The irony was not lost on anyone present. The Krex had been among the most vocal supporters of humanity's original exile and had actively worked to prevent human expansion into space. Now they were offering complete submission in exchange for the security that only human forces could provide. Dr. Lava. Kim entered the hall carrying the latest reports from the Galactic Reconstruction Commission. As the head of post-war recovery efforts, she coordinated relief operations across hundreds of devastated worlds. Her teams used techniques developed during humanity's early years on Kepler to rebuild civilizations from almost nothing. The Devourer homeworlds have been successfully terraformed, she announced. The biological contamination has been neutralized and the planets are ready for resettlement. 12 species have requested permission to establish colonies there under human protection. The transformation of the Devourer homeworlds represented humanity's greatest technological achievement, where the aliens had seen only death and destruction. Human engineers had found opportunity. They used controlled biological processes to convert the ravaged planets into garden worlds more beautiful than anything the galaxy had known. Ambassador Don Carter approached the podium to address the assembly. As humanity's chief representative to the reformed galactic community, he carried the weight of establishing new relationships based on equality rather than the old hierarchies that had dominated space for millennia. We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building something better than what came before, he began. Humanity has no interest in ruling the galaxy through fear. We seek cooperation and mutual benefit for all species. The words were diplomatic, but everyone understood the underlying reality. Human military superiority was so complete that resistance would be suicide for any species that chose confrontation. The demonstration of human capabilities during the war had convinced even the most arrogant aliens that cooperation was their only option for survival. The Vorthek representative rose to speak. Counselor Nexon was the descendant of the alien who had originally sentenced humanity to exile, and her family had spent generations believing they had solved a dangerous problem. Now she faced the reality that they had instead created something far more powerful than they had ever imagined. The Vorthek Collective formally apologizes for the injustices committed against humanity, she said with visible difficulty. We recognize that our actions were based on fear and prejudice rather than wisdom. We request the opportunity to make amends for our mistakes. President Walsh accepted the apology with gracious dignity, but her response carried undertones of steel. Humanity remembers both kindness and cruelty. We judge species by their current actions rather than their past failures. The Vorthak will be welcomed as partners if they prove themselves worthy of trust. The subtle threat was unmistakable. Humanity had forgiven but not forgotten the circumstances of their exile. Any species that reverted to their old attitudes toward humans would face consequences that no military force in the galaxy could resist. Admiral Stone received an urgent communication during the proceedings. His expression darkened as he read the message, and he immediately approached President Walsh with the information. The Krex supremacist faction has launched a coup attempt, he reported quietly. They're trying to restore the old imperial system and have declared humans to be illegal occupiers of Krex space. The news sent ripples of tension through the assembly. Everyone remembered the Krex Empire's military reputation and their aggressive expansionist policies. If they had managed to overthrow their reformed government, it could destabilize the entire region. President Walsh's response was swift and decisive. Deploy the Third Fleet to Krex space immediately. Full authorization for whatever action Admiral Stone deems necessary. The speed and certainty of the human response shocked the alien delegates. Where the old Confederation would have spent weeks debating appropriate responses and forming committees to study the situation, Humanity acted with the efficiency of a species that had learned to make life or death decisions in seconds. Admiral Stone coordinated the response from the command center adjacent to the assembly hall. Human forces moved with precision that amazed alien observers who were accustomed to the slow bureaucratic processes of their own governments. Krek's loyalist forces are requesting immediate assistance, reported Captain Lisa Parker from the lead. Human vessel. The coup forces have seized the capital city and are executing anyone who supported cooperation with humans. The battle that followed lasted exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes. Human forces engaged the rebel fleet with tactics that had been proven against the Devourers and found the Krek's military to be even less challenging than the Galactic. Invaders had been the Krek's warships that had once terrorized peaceful species were destroyed or disabled with embarrassing ease. Their crews surrendered in massive numbers when they realized that resistance would only result in their complete annihilation. On the ground, human marines demonstrated why their reputation had spread throughout the galaxy. They moved through the rebel strongholds like unstoppable forces of nature, neutralizing resistance with minimal casualties to friendly forces or civilian populations. The coup leaders who had dreamed of restoring Krek's dominance found themselves facing human soldiers who moved faster than their enhanced reflexes, could track and struck with weapons that made their technology seem primitive by comparison. President Walsh addressed the galaxy through emergency broadcasts as the operation concluded. Let this serve as a reminder that the new order is not optional. Species that choose cooperation will find humanity to be generous allies. Those who choose aggression will discover why we survived when others failed. The message was received and understood across hundreds of worlds. The brief Krek's rebellion had demonstrated both human military capabilities and their willingness to use them decisively. No other species would make the mistake of testing human resolve. Ambassador Carter returned to the podium as normal proceedings resumed. The interruption had lasted less than 6 hours, but it had fundamentally changed the dynamic in the hall. Any remaining doubts about human authority had been eliminated. As I was saying, he continued with calm professionalism, humanity seeks partnership rather than dominance. But partnership requires mutual respect and adherence to agreed principles. The final sessions of the Assembly established the framework for the new galactic government. The Human Federation would provide military protection and technological assistance to member species in exchange for cooperation in maintaining peace and prosperity. Kepler 442c was designated as the military academy for the entire galaxy. Young beings from dozens of species would train alongside humans to learn the disciplines that had forged humanity into the ultimate survivors. The world that had been intended as humanity's grave had become the foundation of galactic security. President Walsh concluded the proceedings with words that would be remembered for centuries. The galaxy tried to destroy us by sending us to a world of death. Instead, they gave us exactly what we needed to become its protectors. We will not repeat their mistakes of prejudice and fear. Under human leadership, the galaxy will know peace. The applause that followed came from species that had learned to recognize strength and wisdom when they encountered it. The exiles had returned as saviors, and the galaxy would never be the same.